A 9-year-old boy, desperate to know the mother he lost, finds the one secret box his father kept hidden. Inside, he touches an ancient stone key. He doesn't know he just broadcast their exact location to the world. Miles away, the ruthless man who hunted his mother finally sees the signal he has waited 10 years for. And now, he is coming. Not for the father, but for the son. The silence of the high Arizona desert was a heavy, baking blanket. Outside a small, isolated rental house near the Navajo reservation, Jake was mending a fence line. The 42-year-old man's skin was weathered by sun and worry. He pulled at the collar of his faded red flannel, the heavy, dark brown canvas work jacket already too hot for the Arizona morning. He wiped sweat from his short, messy salt and pepper hair. Every few minutes, he would stop and look back at the house, his posture awkward, the way it always was when he was alone with the boy. Inside, the air was still. Leo, his 9-year-old son, sat at the kitchen table, sketching on a pad. He was a small, quiet boy with dark, observant eyes that were a perfect reflection of his mother's. Between them, acting as a silent bridge, lay Wolf. The dog was a magnificent 5-year-old German shepherd, his thick coat a striking silver and gray. He lay on the cool tile, head on his paws, watching Leo with a calm, watchful patience. Leo pushed his chair back. The silence of the house was too loud. He knew his father was outside, but he felt the man's absence like a physical weight. Driven by a curiosity he could not control, Leo walked into his father's bedroom. It was sparse, containing only a bed and a single, locked metal footlocker. Leo had watched his father open it once. He found the small key Jake kept hidden on the window ledge. His hands trembled as he opened the lid. It wasn't treasure. It was just memory. Faded photographs of a smiling woman with his own dark eyes. Ilara. Tucked beneath her journal was a strange object, a palm-sized artifact made of cool, dark stone, intricately carved to look like a sun with interlocking rings. The sun key. Leo picked it up. It felt heavy. He turned the central ring just a fraction. It made a faint metallic clicking sound, and he felt a low, barely perceptible vibration that stopped almost instantly. He put it back, suddenly feeling guilty, and closed the box. The sound of heavy boots on the porch made him jump. Jake entered, brushing dust from his graying stubble. He saw the footlocker, the lid not perfectly flush. His weathered face went pale, a deep fear replacing the usual awkwardness. "Leo?" His voice was low. "Did you open that box?" Leo flinched and nodded, unable to speak. "What did you touch?" Jake asked, moving toward him. Before Leo could answer, a high-pitched, piercing electronic tone exploded from a rugged laptop on a nearby desk. It was an alarm Jake had not heard in years. He spun around. On the screen, a secure tracking program was flashing. A single encrypted signal, dormant for a decade, was now broadcasting their exact coordinates. Jake stared at the screen, then at the metal box. He finally understood. It was a beacon. "It's too late," Jake whispered, his voice rough. "They're here." The electronic wail from the laptop was a sound from a nightmare Jake thought he had buried. He grabbed his 9-year-old son, Leo, pulling the small, quiet boy away from the window. "Get your shoes on," Jake ordered, his voice flat with a sudden, cold dread. "Go. Now." Wolf was already on his feet. The big German shepherd's magnificent silver and gray fur bristled, and a low, menacing growl vibrated deep in his chest. He moved instantly, planting himself between Leo and the front door. But it was too late. The heavy crunch of tires on the desert gravel surrounded them. Not one vehicle, but 4, pulling into a perfect tactical perimeter, blocking all escape. Doors opened and shut with practiced metallic precision. Jake looked out the window, his weathered face hardening. He knew that discipline. He knew that formation. A metallic scratch of feedback cut through the air, followed by a voice, amplified and unnatural. "It has been 10 years, Jake." A man stepped out of the lead 4x4, standing in the harsh Arizona sun. He was tall, perhaps in his late 40s, with a lean, wolfish build. He wore expensive, customized desert tactical gear, tan pants, and a black combat shirt, not a standard uniform. His hair was short and graying, and he had the sharp, intelligent face of a zealot. This was Elias, a man driven by an absolute, terrifying conviction, and the last man on earth Jake wanted to see. He was Jake's former colleague. "I know you're in there," the loudspeaker boomed, "and I know you have the boy." Leo shrank back, grabbing a handful of Wolf's fur. Elias lowered the bullhorn. "The signal from Alara's key has finally activated. I knew you'd keep it. She always trusted you more than me." He raised the bullhorn again. "I am here for the Howling Canyon, and that boy, thanks to his mother's sentimentality, is now the only compass that can lead me there." Jake's mind raced, checking exits, windows, the structural integrity of the rental house. He had nothing. "I have men on every exit," Elias's voice continued, as if reading his mind. "I have authorization to level this structure. You have two choices, Jake. You come out with the boy and the key, and you cooperate. Or I give the order." A heavy silence fell, broken only by Wolf's warning growl. Leo looked up at his father, his dark eyes wide with a strange, quiet resolve. Jake looked at the thin drywall. He looked at his son. He knew Elias was not bluffing. He had spent his entire life running, but now his son was standing in the trap with him. "Stay right behind me, Leo," Jake whispered. He put his hands up, high and empty, where they could be seen through the front window. He walked to the door, his familiar heavy canvas jacket feeling impossibly heavy. He opened it, stepping out onto the porch, pushing Leo gently in front of him. The sun was blinding. Wolf followed, his body low, his lips curled back, but he made no move to attack. Elias smiled, a thin, triumphant expression. "A smart choice, Jake, at last." He nodded to his men. "Get them, all of them." The 4x4 transport vehicle bounced violently over the rock-strewn desert, throwing Jake hard against the metal siding. His hands were bound. In the back with him and two guards, Wolf lay on the floor, his silver and gray body tense, emitting a low, continuous growl that the guards ignored. Jake stared out the dusty windscreen, his face a mask of cold focus. He could see the lead vehicle through the grime. He knew Elias was in that truck, and so was Leo. He had been studying the guards. One was young and nervous, the other older, too relaxed. He'd also been studying the terrain. A sharp, winding series of switchbacks was approaching. It was his only chance. As the truck took the first turn, the tires squealed in protest. Jake used the momentum, slamming his full body weight into the younger guard, knocking him off balance and into the older one. "Get him!" the guard yelled, raising his rifle. But Wolf was already moving. The large German shepherd, a blur of silver and gray fur, lunged, his jaws closing not on the man's arm, but on the rifle itself, yanking it sideways. The vehicle swerved violently. A loud report, a sharp crack, exploded in the enclosed space as the rifle discharged into the floor. The driver, startled by the sound, overcorrected. The truck hit a deep rut at high speed, followed by the immediate loud hiss of a tire blowing out. The 4x4 skidded to a chaotic halt, metal grinding against rock. "Out, Wolf, go!" Jake yelled, breaking his already loosened bindings. He kicked the canvas door open and tumbled out onto the hot gravel, rolling to absorb the impact. Wolf was right behind him. The lead vehicle stopped. The convoy was in disarray. A series of sharp cracks echoed from the lead truck, gunfire pinning them down. Jake looked back, his heart pounding. He saw Elias step out, dragging his 9-year-old son, Leo, by the arm. Elias held a handgun near Leo's head. Jake froze. He couldn't go back. He was trapped, forced to choose between capture or escape. "Run!" Jake screamed, grabbing Wolf's collar. He scrambled up the rocky incline, disappearing into the maze of red rock canyons, the sound of Leo's name being yelled by Elias fading behind him. They ran until their lungs burned. Jake finally collapsed behind a ridge, his shoulder aching from the fall. He had failed. He had escaped, but Elias still had his son. He checked his pockets. They had taken his weapons, his phone, but they had missed the small, folded piece of paper he kept tucked in the lining of his boot, the paper from Alara's box. It had a name, Samuel, and a set of coordinates. He was losing blood and dehydrated, but he forced himself to his feet. He walked for hours, the sun beating down. He stumbled near a patch of dry scrub brush, his vision blurring. A sudden, dry, rattling sound pierced the air. Before Jake could even process the noise, Wolf was in front of him. The GSD barked, a harsh, violent sound, lunging at the ground near Jake's feet. A large rattlesnake, coiled and ready, struck, but Wolf was too fast. The dog pinned the snake's head, snapping its neck with a powerful shake. Jake scrambled back, his heart hammering. The dog, exhausted and thirsty, had still saved his life. He pushed on. The coordinates led him to a small, isolated hogan set deep in a canyon. An older man emerged. His face was deeply weathered, his dark eyes sharp, and he wore a simple shirt and jeans. He looked at Jake with a stern, assessing gaze. Jake was too weak to speak. He simply reached into his pocket and held out a small, broken piece of the sun key, a fragment that had snapped off during the escape. The old man's expression changed instantly to one of awe and deep concern. "You," the old man whispered, "you carry the burden of the Hoshkan clan." Samuel, the older Navajo guardian, tended to the gash on Jake's shoulder from the truck crash with practiced efficiency. His movements were calm, his weathered face showing no judgment, only a deep, quiet focus. Jake sat rigid in the simple hogan, his own canvas jacket folded nearby. Wolf lay by the door, his silver and gray body exhausted, but his head raised. He watched every move Samuel made, his protective instinct warring with the old man's peaceful demeanor. Finally, Samuel finished the bandage. He held the small broken fragment of the sun key in his palm. "You are not the first to come here seeking the Howling Canyon," Samuel said, his voice low. "But you are the first to carry her burden." "Her?" Jake asked, his voice rough. "The scientist, the one who understood the land, the mother of your son, Leo." Jake's head snapped up. "You knew Alara?" "She worked with us," Samuel explained, rising. "She came here a decade ago, tracking the same seismic anomalies that Elias hunts. But she was different. He sees a weapon. She saw a catastrophe." Samuel led Jake out of the hogan, with Wolf following close at Jake's heel. They walked to a sacred kiva, a round, ceremonial room built deep into the red earth. Inside, the air was cool and still. Samuel walked to a small alcove. She knew Elias was obsessed, that he was turning the organization toward her research. She knew he would never stop. She built the key, but she also built a warning. She entrusted this part to us. He revealed a small, strange device, a mix of modern circuitry and ancient turquoise stone. It had a slot that perfectly matched the broken fragment Jake carried. Samuel slid the two pieces together. A low electronic humming sound filled the kiva. A beam of light shot from the device, projecting a flickering holographic image onto the smooth stone wall. It was Alara. Jake stopped breathing. It was her, exactly as he remembered, in her late 20s, with intelligent, dark, observant eyes, Leo's eyes, and a kind, determined face. Wolf, sensing the profound, sudden shift in Jake's emotions, moved to his side and pressed his heavy body against Jake's leg, letting out a soft, questioning whine. Alara's image flickered, her voice filling the chamber. "Jake," she began, her voice strained. "If you are seeing this, it means Elias has found the key, and it means I am gone." Jake shut his eyes, the pain of a decade hitting him at once. "Listen to me," she continued, her scientist's urgency taking over. "The Howling Canyon is not a weapon to be aimed. It is a prison, a volatile geothermal fault line that our ancestors managed to seal. Elias believes he can control it. He is wrong. He will unleash a disaster that will wipe this entire region off the map." She held up a complete sun key in the recording. "I built this not to open the kiva, Jake. I built it to seal the final fracture. Elias never understood. He thinks it's a trigger." Her face softened, the image wavering as tears filled her eyes. "I know you're running, Jake. I always knew. But we have a son. His name is Leo. I've hidden him. Please, if you found him, protect our son. He is your blood. Don't let Elias finish what I died trying to stop." The hologram sputtered and vanished, plunging the kiva back into silence. Jake stood motionless, his grief now forged into a cold, unbreakable purpose. This was no longer just a rescue. It was Ilara's final request. Ilara's voice, a ghost in the stone kiva, had ignited a fire in Jake. The grief was still there, a cold, hard knot in his chest, but now it was eclipsed by a razor-sharp, protective rage. He was no longer just a man running, he was a father fulfilling a promise. Samuel, the older Navajo guardian, moved with an urgency that belied his age. "Elias thinks he knows the path," Samuel said, pulling supplies from a hidden cache. "But Ilara and my people mapped a different way, a harder way, a faster way." They set off at a grueling pace, leaving the sanctuary of the kiva. Wolf ranged ahead. The dog seemed to understand the shift in Jake, his silver and gray body now moving with a hunter's focus. They climbed, not over the main trails, but up sheer, treacherous rock faces and through narrow slot canyons that were barely visible to the untrained eye. Jake, his body lean and hard from years of survival, moved like a mountain goat. Hours later, Samuel held up a hand. "Wait!" They were on a high ridge overlooking a wide, dusty basin. Far below, Elias's convoy of 4x4s was moving slowly. "He has sentries," Samuel whispered, pointing. Jake scanned the ridge opposite them. He saw nothing. "Where?" Wolf, standing beside Jake, suddenly went stiff. His head turned and his ears locked forward, pointing not at the convoy, but at a cluster of boulders 100 yards to their left. The dog let out a single, almost silent huff of air through his nose. Jake and Samuel saw them then. Two of Elias's men in tan tactical gear crouched in the rocks, watching the pass below. "We can't get by," Jake whispered, his hand moving to a knife he didn't have. "We do not need to fight," Samuel said. He pointed up at a loose shale deposit, balanced precariously above a different empty section of the canyon. "We just need to make noise." They worked together, using a sturdy branch as a lever, pushing against the largest support rock. With a deep groan, the shale gave way. A cascade of rocks, large and small, thundered down the opposite canyon wall, a loud crashing sound that echoed like a dozen rifle shots. The two sentries immediately scrambled, moving to investigate the sound, believing Jake's group was trying to outflank them from the other direction. The path was clear. Meanwhile, in the lead vehicle, Leo, the 9-year-old quiet boy, sat across from Elias. The chieftain was on the seat between them. The lean zealot was looking at a rugged laptop, tracking the energy readings. "It's close," he murmured. Ilara was a genius. She thought she was building a lock. She didn't realize she was building the key to paradise. Leo, his dark, observant eyes watching the man, felt a cold knot of anger. This man was talking about his mother. He shifted, his small body accidentally stumbling. His hand knocked the open plastic water bottle on the console. Water splashed across the laptop keyboard and the attached GPS unit. The screen sparked, sputtered, and went black with a sharp static pop. Elias roared in frustration. "You clumsy child!" He grabbed the useless wet equipment. "Stop the convoy! Get the backup tech! Now!" High above, Jake and Samuel watched the convoy halt in confusion. The diversion had worked, both theirs and Leo's. They were gaining time. The shortcut had worked. Jake, Samuel, and Wolf reached the high ridge overlooking the Howling Canyon just as Elias's convoy rolled to a stop below. The canyon was a deep circular basin ending in a sheer wall of rock. At its center sat a large, sealed kiva. "He is too late," Samuel whispered, relief in his voice. "He cannot open it without—" "He has Leo," Jake said, his voice flat. They watched in horror as Elias, the lean zealot, dragged the 9-year-old boy from the 4x4. Leo, small and terrified, was forced to the stone door of the kiva. Elias held the complete sun key, now repaired. "Place it in the center," Elias commanded, his voice echoing in the basin. "No, Leo, don't!" Jake roared from the ridge. Elias looked up, his face a mask of triumph. He pressed his handgun to Leo's head. "Do it, boy, or your father dies failing to save you, just as he failed your mother." Leo, trembling, his dark eyes filled with tears, looked at his father on the ridge. He then turned and pressed the sun key into the ancient lock. The sound was not a click. It was a low, deep rumble that vibrated through the stone. The kiva door did not open. Instead, a massive fissure cracked open in the canyon floor, splitting the earth. A pressurized, deafening sound like 1,000 jets erupted from the ground. A colossal vortex of superheated steam, sand, and blue lightning, the howling soul, burst from the fissure, tearing a hole in the sky. The ground heaved. "It's here!" Elias screamed, his arms outstretched, his face lit by the unholy light. He laughed, a high, thin sound. "Paradise! Ilara, you fool! You tried to lock it, but you just built me the key!" He walked toward the vortex, holding a device, trying to control it. "Elias, it's unstable," Jake yelled. The whirlwind seemed to react. A single violent gust of wind broke from the main vortex. It slammed into Elias, lifting the lean zealot off his feet like a leaf. He did not even have time to scream. The storm tossed him high against the far canyon wall and flung him into a deep, newly formed fissure. He vanished. The canyon was destroying itself. Boulders the size of trucks began to fall. Jake scrambled down the ridge, his canvas jacket flapping. "Leo!" He ran through the swirling dust, grabbed his son, and pulled him away from the platform just as it collapsed. "Jake, this way!" Samuel yelled, waving from the canyon wall. A secondary tremor hit, and a wall of rock collapsed, burying the convoy. The air instantly filled with a thick, choking dust, plunging the world into a blind, roaring darkness. "Samuel!" Jake yelled, holding his coughing son. "I can't see." "The ancestors' tunnel. It is here." Samuel's voice was close but invisible. "I cannot find the entrance. We are blind." Jake was blind. Leo was panicking. The ground shook. "Wolf!" Jake commanded, his voice breaking. "Find him! Find Samuel! Varan! Lead!" Wolf was terrified. The noise was deafening, the ground unstable. But he heard his master's command. He dropped his head, his silver and gray fur coated in dust. He smelled the dust, the sulfur, and the 2 scents he trusted. Jake, his anchor, and Samuel, the man from the Hogan. The dog barked, a sharp sound of location. He pushed through the blinding dust, following Samuel's scent. "He is here!" Samuel cried out. Jake, holding Leo, stumbled toward the bark. He grabbed Samuel's arm. "I have you! Wolf, lead! Find the air!" Wolf, now with his pack behind him, focused on the one thing that was different. Amidst the choking dust, he smelled a tiny, clear stream of clean, cool air. The tunnel. He barked again and ran toward it. Jake, holding Leo and dragging Samuel, followed the sound of the GSD. They dove into the narrow, dark crevice just as the entire Howling Canyon collapsed inward, sealing the roaring, chaotic energy forever. In the darkest moments, when the world collapses and we are completely blind, we learn what truly guides us. It isn't a map. It's the unwavering loyalty we can follow home. Wolf, Jake, and Leo found their way out together. That is the bond this story is all about. If you felt that connection, we would be so grateful if you'd let us know in the comments. Your likes and shares help this pack grow, and we invite you to subscribe and continue the journey. The next part is already waiting for you right on the screen.